Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to be talking about how to create a histogram from a frequency table. So we're given the ages of 20 people, and we want to construct a histogram with 5 classes using the data. Let's start by creating a table with 3 columns. The first column are the classes. The second column are the class boundaries. And the third column is the frequencies. To find our classes, we first want to start by finding the range of our dataset. So the range is just the greatest value minus the least value. So the greatest value is 57, and the least value is 28. Therefore, the range is 57 minus 28, which is equal to 29. Now that we've found the range, we can use it to find the class width. So the class width is just the range divided by the number of classes we want. So the width is the range 29 divided by 5 classes, and we get this to be 5.8. Now, a very important step is to round up the width. We should do this such that the new width has the same number of decimal points as our data set. So since our data has only whole numbers and no decimal points, we round this to 6. Let's say we found the width to be just 5, we would still round this up to 6. To find the lower bound of the first class, we just look at the smallest value in our data set. So this would be 28. Then to find the lower bound of the next class, we simply add our class width. So we add 6. So 28 plus 6 is 34. 34 plus 6 is 40. 40 plus 6 is 46. And finally, our fifth and last class has a lower bound of 46 plus 6, which is 52. To find the upper bound of the first class, we take the lower bound of the second class and subtract 1 unit of precision. Since we are working with whole numbers, we would just subtract 1. If our dataset had 1 decimal point, we would subtract 0.1. And if our dataset had 2 decimal points, we would subtract by 0.01, and so on. So the upper bound of the first class is 34 minus 1, which is 33. Then to find the upper bound of the next class, we can just add 6, our class width, to the upper bound of the first class. So 33 plus 6 is 39. 39 plus 6 is 45. 45 plus 6 is 51. And for the last class, it has an upper bound of 51 plus 6, which is 57. You'll notice that there's a gap of 1 between each class. So when we use this to create a histogram, there will be a gap between each box. This is not something we want, so we want to use something called a class boundary to create our histogram. To find the class boundary, we just follow a simple procedure. So take the lower bound of the second class, so 34. Then subtract the upper bound of the first class, so 33. Then divide by 2. So we get this to be 0.5. Now using this number, subtract it from each lower bound and add it to each upper bound to find the class boundaries. So for the first class, the lower bound is now 28 minus 0.5, which is 27.5. And the upper bound is 33 plus 0.5, which is 33.5. Doing this for the rest of the classes, we get that for the second class, the boundary is 33.5 to 39.5. For the third class, it's 39.5 to 45.5. For the fourth, it's 45.5 to 51.5. And for the fifth class, it has a class boundary of 51.5 to 57.5. Now we want to count where each observation falls into each class. So for the first class, it has a range of 28 to 33. So let's see how many values in our dataset fall into this class. So there's 1, 2, 3. Doing this carefully for each class, we find there are 6 values between 34 and 39, 2 values between 40 and 45, 5 values between 46 and 51, 4 values between 52 and 57. Okay, great. Now that we've constructed our frequency table, let's use this to create our histogram. Starting with our y-axis, which is frequency, we want to label this from 0 to 6. Then our x-axis. Normally we would start the x-axis at 0, but for simplicity, we'll start it at our lowest class boundary. So that will be 27.5. And that goes to 33.5. And that goes to 39.5. Then the next class goes to 45.5. The next one goes to 51.5. And the last class ends at 57.5. Awesome. So we can just use our frequency table to fill in our histogram. So the class between 27.5 to 33.5 has a frequency of 3. So filling in this rectangle. The next class has a frequency of 6. The next class has a frequency of 2. Next one has a frequency of 5. And the last class has a frequency of 4. We can also label the frequencies on the top of each bar. So 3, 6, 2, 5, 4. And this is our histogram. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe.